Okay. Oops, you're muted, I believe, but I
Sorry.
saw a lot of nodding, so.
Yes, I will
Okay.
take them. I'm not able to take them directly on the agenda because I don't have access.
Of
Okay,
course.
but I'll go ahead and
thank you. We can copy and paste into it later, and we'll try to work it out. Although I see now that you've just dropped, I think, from the meeting. So hopefully that will resolve itself. All right. So, okay, good. You're back. I was worried. Okay, great. All right. So I'm going to go ahead through the roster for roll call. Brian Benavides.
Present.
Ann Dameron. Kevin Ching.
I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. Edward Liu. Edward Liu. No. Okay. Nishi Bagat. Nishi. No. Okay. Yen Chen.
Here.
Excellent. Divya. I know I saw Divya. Excellent. Calvin. Calvin Hearns. No. Okay. Anna Shipper.
Here.
Excellent. Anna. Twisha.
I'm here.
Great. Marinelle.
Here.
Great. Crystal, I know, emailed in. Gabriella. Gabriella Munoz-Gill. No. Okay. Lerona Jones.
Here.
Excellent. Michael Gardner, I think we might still be working on getting him in. Okay. Ivy emailed us. We have Mr. Musto here for Dr. Rocha. Letty, of course. Marcus, is Marcus going to be joining us this evening?
Not tonight, no.
Okay. Trustee Crosby.
I am here.
Excellent. And President Campbell. Okay, I don't think President Campbell is here this evening. All right, and then we'll do our best, of course, if people are able to join, and I know Letty is going to keep working on trying to get people in as best as we can. All right, so did we have any public comment submitted for this evening?
No public comment was submitted.
All right, excellent. All right, so there was a glitch, unfortunately, with the minutes. So we're going to postpone approval of the October minutes once they're unlocked. So you were not able to preview them when those were sent out. So district staff will work on getting the approval out, and then we will just approve both the October and the November minutes at our next meeting. So we're going to move on now to the overview of kind of the work of LCAAC. So I believe Letty has a presentation that's going to go over what the 8 state priorities are, and then giving us kind of a flavor of the new and also what we still expect given that we're starting our new 3-year cycle. Letty, did you want to share a screen?
Yeah, Steve's going to share it for me.
Okay.
Thank you, though. And as he's starting to get that queued up, welcome to all of you. I see some new members also, and we thought it was fitting to start with just kind of a very quick but generic overview. So this may be a repeat for some of you, but certainly with some of our new folks, we thought it would be good to all start on the same level. And so just to start, next slide, please. So, the first question of, why are we here, right? So this group is a very important group in the respect to your representative of our whole Fremont Unified School District community. So although we're a nice sized group, we are also representative of just all students and all stakeholders in our community. So our work is to certainly represent our own voice, but represent the voice of others. So the LCAP is the Local Control Accountability Plan, and it is a 3-year plan that all districts in California work through. And the plan is essentially a document that has goals, that has actions, that has services, and it has expenditures, and it's all in support of outcomes and better outcomes for all of our students. But something very distinct about the LCAP is this, that when the state made a switch to doing away with what was called the old categorical funds, like the EIA, Economic Impact Aid, some of these other funds, we made a switch away, and it became instead LCFF and supplemental and concentration funds. And at that point, what was the direction from the state was that we would do this at a very local level, because who knows our community best? It's certainly the folks who live here, who have students here, and who work here, and also as community members are here to represent. So when funds are given to school districts, there has to be a process that a school district goes through, and that's to identify data, look through data, see if we're making gains for all of our students. But we are specifically also looking at how we are meeting the needs of students that are identified as what's called unduplicated. And an unduplicated student refers to students who are English learners in our district. So an English learner is a student who, when at the point of registration, when the parent or the guardian filled out the registration form, answered the home language survey. And essentially is that another language is spoken in the home. And then a school district must have the due diligence to assess the student to see if the student is an English language learner. And when that happens, the student then becomes identified as an English language learner, and then goes through the process of reclassification, becoming fluent English proficient. But during that time, our district and our work is to look at how do we build an LCAP that meets the needs of this unduplicated student. Also, these are students who are identified as income or categorically eligible for free and reduced price lunch. And so, as you know, students and all families fill out a lunch application, for the most part all, and we hope that all will, because there's other things that come with that. And there we're able to see students who qualify for free or for reduced price. There's also another group of students that are categorically eligible. So for example, a migrant education student, a student who is identified as migrant ed automatically qualifies for free and reduced price lunch. And so that student group is also identified within this group. And then finally, foster youth. Foster youth students are also part of this unduplicated. So another way to also say is that when districts are measured as to how many unduplicated students do you have, is that the students only counted once. So although we may have a student who is an English language learner, may also qualify for free and reduced price lunch, and may also be a foster youth, we don't get 3 counts. We're only counting the student once in our unduplicated count. And then, this slide deck will be shared with all of you, and we will certainly post it. And I thank Mr. Musto. He has linked our current LCAP here. And so we can, that will be for your reference later on, that you can look at it if you don't have a copy of the latest LCAP. But that will also, you'll be able to make connections as to what does it look like. Okay, so next slide, please. So 8 state priorities. So LCAPs are based on certainly our board goals or LCAP goals, but also every district must look at the 8 state priorities. And you may say to yourself, but there's 10 there. So as I go through them all, I'll speak to number 9 and number 10. So the first one, the priority area number 1, that's what's called as basic services. It's kind of like the floor. Is it, do we have teachers? Are they credentialed? What are the conditions of learning? What are the basics that every district must have for teaching and learning? So that's priority 1. Priority 2 looks at the implementation of Common Core. So again, conditions of learning. And so as we're starting, and we'll learn more about the LCAP, all of the work, the goals, the services, the expenditures are tied to these 8 state priorities, like every other district in California. Parent involvement. It is crucial that we identify how we're reaching all of our parents and how we're engaging with our parents. And we want to get to a level where we build on success. So certainly we have parents that help in our schools. And of course, I've got some pre-pandemic experiences and some during pandemic, but our families are the best, resources that we have. And how do we engage with our parents? Well, certainly here tonight, we see parents, and that is a very high level role of engagement versus perhaps the parents, which we need as well, will come into the teacher's lounge and will have stuff to cut out and help to sort papers and make copies and all of that good stuff. We need that as well. But as you can see, as a district, we need kind of the full range of parent involvement. And it is our role as the district to engage and to ensure that we have opportunities and we have that connection with our families. And all of that is within our LCAP. When we look at student achievement, again, that's looking at pupil outcomes with an eye towards the unduplicated. So again, as we start to really look at this work of what we've done in the past and what we need to do for the future, we have to make sure that we look at pupil outcomes for all student groups, but with a keen eye towards foster youth, free and reduced price eligible students, migrant education, and English learners. Student engagement, how are we reaching students? It's beyond just the teaching and learning, but how are we keeping them motivated? What is the role of support for our students? And that goes into priority 6, which is school climate. School climate, those of you that have students in the elementary schools and are working with the elementary schools, we're embarking on PBIS, positive behavior interventions. What that speaks to is climate for the school and how are we supporting all students, but also giving our staff the tools to engage with kids. So that talks to school climate. Course access for conditions of learning. This is when we start to look at access for students to advanced placement classes, to college and career readiness, to MVROP classes. All of that makes that's this broad course curriculum for students. So beyond the teaching of the Common Core, beyond science and math, how are we giving students access to more? And also celebrating that. Like I will say, one of the wonderful things about Fremont Unified is that we award the seal of biliteracy. That means that students that are engaged in immersion programs when they're in high school, or students who are taking AP exams can get the seal of biliteracy on their transcript. And that's big because that's something that students can celebrate and use it for other options post-graduation. So that's where, when we look at the building of the LCAP and when we look at the California dashboard, we see how much growth has Fremont done in terms of serving the whole child. And then student outcomes, again, that speaks, it's a little repetitive here, but it speaks again to achievement of students. And then finally, priority 9 and priority 10. I have it listed here because that really is the work of the Alameda County Office of Education. They work, as you know, we have community day schools where some of our students may have to be for a while because of other circumstances and because of disciplinary issues, but these are still our students. And how do we work hand in hand with Alameda County Office of Education? And again, foster youth. And foster youth is really looking at students who may be in group homes, who may be working with more state resources. And so priority 9 and 10 for the most part is Alameda County Office, but I thought it was important to list it. Okay, next slide. So the new LCAP
Leslie,
template.
I'm sorry, could we
Sure.
pause just for a minute?
Absolutely.
And Steve, I don't know if you could stop screen share just for a second. Thank you so much. I wanted to check in because that we got everyone. I think that we were able to have a few new folks join us. So we have Kevin, Anna made it in, Michael made it in. Correct me immediately. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing your name. Zenaida?
Yes, Zenaida,
Oh.
and I'm the Spanish interpreter.
Oh, okay. So you work for FUSD?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so will you need anything from us, or are you just doing an interpreting to assist on the back end when others?
Yes.
Okay.
When somebody needs me, I'm right here.
Okay, excellent. I was just wondering, we didn't have you on our roster, so just checking to see, although I know Anna is Hot Pocket, but I didn't know if Zenaida wasn't on there. All right, I think that's everyone. And then I just wanted to pause. I'm really glad that Letty was able to put this initial kind of information together to build on the couple discussions we've had already at the last 2 meetings for those of us that are new, but also because some good questions were brought up even from members that have been on this committee for a year or two. When we review our goals and actions, that we're really focusing on things that are targeting our unduplicated students. So while Letty went over those 8 state priorities, they can sound kind of general, right? Pupil outcomes and student engagement and parent involvement. But we want to specifically be thinking, how are we going to engage parents and families of EL students? Engage families and guardians and parents that are supporting homeless and foster youth, and so on. So there are a lot of amazing things that Fremont does, but just kind of some food for thought. I want to build on what Letty was saying, for example, with our bilingual seal. That is an amazing thing that really pushes a lot of students to have something that's above and beyond, which is amazing. But it also helps support and celebrate our EL students. It takes what can be something that's a challenge for children entering FUSD and actually builds on it and celebrates it for the strength that it is. And I want to then, we can talk about that as kind of one thing that Fremont does that actually could fit into our LCAP. There are also other things that used to be in our LCAP that we've taken out, that we identified. I'll say robotics was one thing. So we might have thought, well, this is an elective, it's going to help kids get into some STEM, but it's a fun thing to do. And what we found, though, is that it wasn't our targeted students who were actually taking advantage of that elective. So we found that it wasn't appropriate as a group to have that as part of our funding. So while we come up and brainstorm a lot of awesome things that we can do for our students, and some we continue doing in FUSD, they don't all fit into our LCAP. So that's just kind of a lens that we want to have when we're doing the work and having these discussions. And while our district management that's here is always amazing in answering questions. I know Steve answered some questions last time about AP testing and PSAT testing and those things, which a lot of parents care about. And our staff always answers questions when they can. For our work, and when we determine our funding and resources specifically for LCAP, we want to think, are these action items furthering the goals, targeting and closing the opportunity gap for our unduplicated students? So I just wanted to pause and see if anyone had any questions on those ideas before Letty continues forward in her presentation. Okay, great. Letty, you good? Steve? Oh, yeah.
So I was of the assumption that these two are exclusive, like the funds for the unduplicated students and the funds for the student advancement, student excellence, etc. So that was the reason why I was bringing up the points last time about the AP classes and then the GATE students and all. But if we are going to pull everything from the same pool, I think everybody is clear about the priority that it should go to the unduplicated students first. And if there is any remnant, then we could think of other advancements.
Oh, and absolutely. And Divya, there are some areas where we might see that homeless and foster students, not to get too into the weeds, but only want to respond because I was not saying that that conversation was totally inappropriate. We have found, obviously, if we have students that are homeless in foster, but actually are very high academic excelling, we could use funds to target students, for example, perhaps to pay those fees for proctoring through FUSD. So it doesn't even, I'm not even saying that that would be totally inappropriate if we're targeting. We just always want to have that lens of, are we on the whole going to be furthering those students more than other students, for example? That was the only reason I brought it up.
Yeah, I get that. Thank you.
Michael, did you want to
I just actually wanted to echo what you said and just thank you for saying it. And that it's really important that we keep our focus on the unduplicated students. Now, sometimes creating a stable environment, which affects everybody, is one of the most important things we can do for unduplicated. So we shouldn't think it's only, hey, does this specifically only target these students? But it should also always include unduplicated students in some form. And that's an important part of what we do. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you so much, Michael. Okay, Letty, I think we're ready to move on.
Great. Okay, thank you, Steve. So, you know, why and how often do we do this work? So the good news is that we have enough of you that are carrying over from the previous year, and then we'll have new folks who come on board, so that we've always got a core group and we continue to work together. But you know, the state is wonderful. And I'm being a little bit sarcastic, but there's a new template. And so the template does seem to change a bit, and we get that, and you know, that's all part of the process, and we understand that. But I just wanted to share, although you have the template of the current LCAP, please know it's going to look a little different. And so where we're at right now is that we just received word from the California Department of Education that they are going to start to receive input from the general public, from school districts, from board members, from superintendents. That's going to be in late December. And that's going to be an opportunity for folks to look at a draft of what the LCAP template looks like for California. And then after they look at it, the state board looks at it, their own staff looks at it, then there will be a public release of the template in late January. So I hope to be able to bring that to all of you to look at it. We can start to talk about it. And it's going to come around actually a pretty good time, because by then we'll be able to have look at data, we'll start to draft our goals, start to look at just what some of the work's going to be, but we'll also be able to see what does the template look like. And then I also want to share that we're working with the Alameda County Office of Education. They are our partners, and so they do collaborate with us. They attend the same state meetings that Dr. Rocha, Mr. Musto, and I also attend, and so we're able to really collaborate and see just what's coming up and you know what do we need to be aware of. And so in May, they actually will see the template, or excuse me, they will actually see the draft that we've all been working on, and the county will also be able to kind of weigh in on it and give us their advice and their opinion, with the end goal of bringing it to the public hearing in June for our Board of Education to look at it and to also give more direction, and then with the final approval by the board at the end of June. Okay. Okay, one more. And so I do want to share that, yes, so that's the fun. Did I put that slide twice? I apologize. So I want to show that after we have all of that, this 3-year cycle is actually really important. So that's actually the good news, that we're embarking at the beginning of a 3-year cycle. So we'll be able to kind of look at data, but I also want us to think about, as we look at data, is that there's some work that we're going to want to have accomplished, but it won't happen in a year. So we also want to have that awareness of how it layers in. So I'll give you an example. With the previous LCAP, with the current LCAP, there was planning around climate and thinking about that priority area. And so as Fremont, this is prior to me coming here, but as Fremont started to look at that PBIS, the positive behavior interventions, that was a goal, but that's not something that's going to happen in 1 year. So there's actually a 3 to 4 year plan for PBIS. So there's going to be some aspects of the current LCAP that we're going to look at with data, to make a decision as to how it will carry through for the next 3 years. And so we'll get to that, but I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of background on that. And so, as I alluded to before, the end goal is that we will do a public hearing at the first meeting in June, and then a final adoption by the board at the last meeting in June. And that's going to be at the end of this. And then it is submitted to the Alameda County Office of Education by June 30th. And what's also happening at the same time is the budget. And so then our budget also goes forward with the public hearing and the final adoption by the board in June. And so the budget and the LCAP are these two processes, but they're going hand in hand. So, but they will both be going to the board in the month of June. I think that was my last slide. Was it, Steve?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great.
Can I add one thing real quick? One thing, it's linked on this presentation, the 8 priorities of our district, and it's linked on there. Let me see if I can share it. I'm going to point this out because this is written in a lot of education needs. You saw the goals and it seemed like, wow, that goal seems like a different goal. I'd encourage you to look at, let me see if I can, here we go. So here we go. Here's priority 2 as an example. And you see right here, it kind of has a sub description right here that really helps kind of distinguish things. I often find myself when we're writing LCAP and referencing LCAP things, going back to this website just as a reference. So if you are confused by something, join the club. Everybody is a little confused when you're dealing with the CDE, but hopefully we can help be a reference, and the websites from the CDE usually are pretty helpful as well.
Great, thank you. So is there any questions on that in terms of the background? And then I hope at our next meeting in January, we'll be able to bring forward a timeline that will have a bigger picture as to what it's going to look like, and we'll have more information from CDE by then, I'm also hoping.
Is that presentation on the agenda?
No, we will, so it's shared tonight, and so we'll have it attached, yes. And the nice thing about it also is, I said, the priorities have links, and so you'll be able to, at your leisure, to also look at each of the priority areas. So you'll be able to learn more about what they all say.
Could I ask a question, Steve? The one you had just noted, the sentence that it had there for number 2, it said at the end, like, in particular for English learners. So even though all of this, all of LCAP is really for those unduplicated, are there different kind of targets or mentionings of unduplicated students depending on the priority?
So I went back, I was like, did it say in particular? It actually says including, and that's one of those, yeah, you really have to look closely. So here we go, put it up there again. So why I think this is referenced here, I know it, is that oftentimes in the substandards, a lot of the English learner specific ones are listed in the LCAP under priority 2. So sometimes they'll say, yes, it fits for all unduplicated students, but this standard is got a lot on English learners, and another one will have a lot on, say, foster youth. So yeah, it does get spread out.
Okay, any other discussion kind of on what we're embarking on? I don't know, Letty, if you wanted to say a little bit more, because even folks that have been on the committee for a couple of years, how will this year be different because it's going to start the first of the 3-year cycle next year? What might we see a little bit different now for the rest of the year as compared to the last 2 years?
Yeah, so we're going to have to make an adjustment of thinking pre-pandemic, during pandemic, right? And what is post-pandemic? And the CDE hasn't said that. That's just kind of some of the thinking that I've been doing. So I'll give you an example. So if you recall, within the LCP, that's the other document, that was the 1 year only, the governor had said, we're doing this LCP, and that's all been board approved now, and we're moving forward. One of the items in there is an assessment system or assessments to measure learning loss. Because we know that although, there we go. Apologize. So because as we know, some of our students are suffering learning loss because different reasons, right? And so what I am envisioning is that we will have to start to look at some of those data sets as to what are we going to plan for next year once we have a better semblance of what next year will look like to really support the students that suffered that learning loss. So that might be something that looks different within the LCAP, that perhaps, although in the past we have always targeted kids that need to make growth, we may have more students that have to make growth. We're going to have to kind of look at that. I think some of the things that are different this year to last year is, again, it's a 3-year cycle. So as we start to plan out for 3 years out and just kind of thinking about how do we move students, and how do we achieve our goals, that's something else we have to think about. Another area is, as I spoke to, I keep using PBIS as an example because that's the one I've been thinking about lately because we've had, folks going through that. As a district, we made an investment last year as we start to think about the planning year in year 1, year 2 for PBIS for all of our schools to go through that work for climate. So as a group, we're going to have to look at those recommendations to continue with that investment because we also don't want to stop some of that work. And so we'll look at that and have that conversation and really looking at, are we making our targets? I don't know, Steve, is there anything else that, because you all were here last year, like kind of just thinking about for this next year?
I think the next part where we're going to talk about getting community input is perhaps the most important thing. This is a 3-year plan, and every year we do revisit the plan to make adjustments and things. But the purpose of the LCAP is to be responsive to the community. So how this committee decides how we're going to get input from the community and how specifically that impacts unduplicated students, I think is really crucial. So the next few months are going to be important for our process.
This is Yan Chen. One of the things that I brought up here and there throughout this last year was about the English learners. For example, the district might have more information about when we changed over to Common Core, the English learners, start scoring lower, especially on some the way they learn math, for example, in other countries, and versus Common Core, more word-based and English-based. And so that was something that maybe we could get a little bit more information on. I think it was 2 meetings ago, I also brought up the point about what services are available to the English learners. And there's a period that we track them, but is it true that the district has like a 5-year, or the state has a criteria that we only track them for 5 years and they kind of fall off the English learner base? And what happens during that full 5 years? We know when an English learner comes into the district, they go to the registration side, and we could actually get more services up front from day one, even before school starts. We don't have to wait for the first state assessment and the teacher kind of muddling through for the first, month and a half before we provide any real services to them. So anyway, those are just some of the things that, we could look at some goals and see if we can get some more data from the school district, district offices, especially on the English learners.
Good. Yes, we can definitely bring that in.
So Letty, this actually would be a time that, because we're starting a new 3-year cycle, Yen might be bringing up something that is even a goal or an action area we don't have anywhere represented. And this is the appropriate time to develop a new goal or swap something out entirely then, right?
Yes, and remembering it's that parallel track. It's starting to get, and that'll be our next items, getting community input, starting to look at data sets, and really doing the thinking around, and I think that's a wonderful hypothesis. Like, what would it look like if we intervened sooner with a student who's identified as an English learner? And then how are students who are English learners doing in mathematics, and has that changed? So there's a lot there that I think are some great next steps. And so I'm taking down notes as well. But yes.
Lerona?
So my question is, what about kids that's dealing with behavior issues and don't have the confidence to, don't have the confidence when they coming into a new school? What type of situation or help that the kid can get if they come from one school to the next and they have an issue with separation anxiety? What type of assistance are you guys assisting with the kids that's dealing with separation anxiety and transitioning?
Yeah, Letty, I don't know that it's a great topic, the socio-emotional and the mental supports, because we know that if kids are dealing with the kind of things that you're talking about, Lerona, the academics, it's just not going to happen. And we see kids through behavior say that they're in need. Letty, did you want to, I know we say PBIS, but I think Lerona brings up something that PBIS actually could be a support like that. And then at the secondary level, we've been looking at restorative practices for a long time, and that could also be something. So Letty, since you've been working on PBIS with some of our others, did you want to share that?
Yes, absolutely. And that would certainly speak to addressing, and if you've been watching our board meetings, if you've been just turning on the television, social emotional learning is big right now for our students, even students who did not have that separation anxiety or the other. There's new students coming up with needing support. So I think absolutely we should look at that, and then tying it as a possibility of a goal. So all of this is wonderful. I'm taking down notes as we start to kind of unpack this, and definitely I think an area to look at. But yes, PBIS does address it, but and restorative practices, but there may even be some more that we look at, because I know I've been hearing from our board also and from others around just the role of counselors and in looking at counselors across the district, and how do we ensure that all students have access.
Yeah, and one more thing, because what I'm noticing too, even with the long distance, the distance learning, I'm recognizing too the same type of barrier when it came from the kids is being in the classroom and they not getting a proper attention that they need from the teacher, because it's not a lot of teacher assistant. And with the long distance, they still continue to ignore kids that have other needs than the other students that may be advanced. So what type of help are you guys assisting even with the long distance for kids that's getting ignored? Because the parents are also able to see now what's actually happening in the classroom.
Steve, did you want to share? We actually have built into our plan for this year, Lerona, doing some district-wide cohorting for more small group attention for intervention. Steve, I think November is kind of the time that starts to get kicked off, but I don't know if things are a little different. Did you want to share an update on that?
Sure. So these are specifically academic interventions. So what we have spent most of October doing, and a little bit into November, is doing the learning loss assessments of every student in the district. And what we're looking to do is identify students who are assessed on last year's content standards, and the content standards that we deem the most important, and seeing where the gaps are. So what we're doing now is principals are drawing up plans on how to do academic interventions for them. From the question I heard, I think there's also there's definitely a social emotional element to that. And what I was speaking of earlier about the community input, this is where I was lucky enough to attend several of these community input events at some of the schools last year. And there were definitely some consistencies, how parents and how community members see schools often is very different from maybe how teachers and staff do. And this is where the importance of this committee is so essential, because they're able to identify problems that we perhaps aren't recognizing, or perhaps we are needing to correct. And if we can get that information, this is the group that can really start to develop a plan and a process for how that's going to be. It is this group who tells the schools, this is the issue that we're having, and let's develop a plan to address that in the next 3 years. So it's input like that. I mean, that's obviously a big topic, and it's something that's always going to be a challenging one. But let's start addressing it now before things get even worse. So thank you for that thought.
I think that's a good segue, the things you all are bringing up, because now you have the lens maybe of some type of things you want to get from the community. And while people can always, maybe write in something on a survey, they won't have it in their minds. I think you're all bringing up some ideas. So I'm going to have Letty go over the draft survey, but then what you want to be thinking, if we could add maybe a couple questions this time around, so kind of see what isn't on there. So yes, these questions have already been asked, so they're fine questions, but really what isn't there? What things do we want the community and parents to be able to surface and show us that they're not being asked?
Perfect, thank you. So you all, I'll ask Steve, Mr. Busto, to show his screen with the questions. So for the last 4, maybe 5 years, Fremont Unified has surveyed our community, and the survey is done annually. And so we wanted to look at these questions again for this year and start to prepare for that. Typically, this survey goes out in January, and then we look at this to help us inform the writing of the LCAAC. But we also recognize 2 things. One, this is a very unusual year. We had a very unusual spring. And 2, when I kind of looked at this, I thought, we're missing a few things here. So I think there's power in keeping very similar questions because we want to be able to measure year to year to year. But for this year, speaking with Victoria, there could be some more questions that we can add. So why don't we take a few minutes to just kind of look at this? And then I think if we can have a discussion around what do we see is missing? And it could be pretty big picture, and Steve and I will take some notes. I don't think we have to get to the point of wordsmithing the specific question, but if we get at least kind of feedback as to what's missing, that'll be important. So let's, if we don't mind, take a couple of minutes to just check in on this.
Really quick, the answers, is it yes, no, 1 through 5, or free fill?
So my understanding is some of them are kind of a scale. Some of these are yes, no. And so, yes, it varies.
And
most of them are.
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say most of them are scaled scores, so 1 to 5.
Thank you.
And then I see Twisha.
Yeah. Any chance this was emailed before? It's just easier to read on a separate browser.
Yes, this was linked in the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
And then Letty, are we planning? Are we planning to have things that are school-based, like physical school-based, like number 3, child school environment, physically safe? Are we planning still on asking those questions this year, given that some of those won't be relevant? Will NA be an option? What are we thinking on those?
So looking at this first, I was thinking there may be some that we are going to tweak a little because we're in distance learning, but we thought they were still important to ask. So for example, if you look at number 3, it's really like online, right? And so we would change some of these questions a bit. And then I also know that there's some, this is an exceptional year, but I wanted to see how close we can keep some of it so we can just have that longitudinal data, based on what Fremont has done in the past. And then also after tonight, what I'm hoping is that, certainly we will share this before it goes out with the board and with the superintendent, because we want them also to see like, what else are we missing? And so it'll be important to kind of take it through another set of eyes as well after this.
So this is Yen Chen. Maybe this question could be for Stephen. My focus has been a little bit on this English learner, and I know that the district has a different contact information set for all the English learner parents. And I don't know if when this survey goes out, if you were to send it to the English learners, what would they perceive as far as the questions? Is the material appropriate for my child? Obviously, if they can't understand what's going on in the classroom, it's not. But no parent wants to have their child be sent from a 4th grade level to a 2nd grade classroom. So I don't know if there's something that we can do to gather a little bit more information from the English learner community.
So we do have DLAC groups, which are English learner specific groups at school sites, and there's also a district group as well. The survey is also administered in Spanish and Chinese, which are the 2 largest languages represented among our English learners. But there may be something more we can do to get information. For instance, this summer, when we started to do surveys for all the things related to distance learning, we sometimes asked parents to identify, are you a parent of an English learner? Are you the parent of different categories? Perhaps that's something we want to do when we do surveys, because then we can isolate their responses to get us a better sense of what their input is. So there's lots of possibilities we could do within these survey options.
Trustee Crosby? Oops, I thought I saw Crosby's hand. Okay, Divya?
So are these questions going to be sent online for the parents to fill it in? Okay, so if so, for each of these questions, if the parent is answering any of them as no or on a lower score, is there a way that we could provide them prompts or maybe some hints below the question, which is going to give them more context, more information from where they could get the details or take some more decisions, etc. Like, for example, if you take question number 7, which is at the top, right? If my child has been bullied, so maybe we could give bullying, anti-bullying resources there, if the parents are aware or not. Many of the parents who maybe new, who have moved here or who are like immigrants or whatever, they might not be aware about all the resources which are available. So when they are giving a low score and when we are providing them the information that these are already available, maybe you're not aware of those, why not explore them more? Maybe for this survey, they might give them low score, but when they sort of digest that information and when they are taking action on that, eventually the students also will be benefited from that, and next year they might fare well, and our surveys also will be benefiting them. Rather than just soliciting answers, straightforward answers from them, we are also providing them more information to go forward from there.
I like that. That's a great idea.
I'm wondering, oh, sorry, just on that note, I think just as the balance of for data purposes, I think that it could be fine if there's a way, even though keeping it anonymous, if someone replies but they have their email attached, they could then receive outreach. My only concern with offering resources within a survey is it is then a statistical challenge, because did they receive help if there's already resources underneath? Now, as a parent, I don't know if I'm supposed to answer that they just gave that to me, or so I think that might be the only challenge of doing it within the survey. But I think that's a great idea to compile and see if there's a way to kick back some resources and some contacts to parents who answer. But I'm not sure how that affects the anonymity. But that's definitely something we can look into. I think that's a great idea. And Divya, I think you had something still.
What was that? Sorry.
I think you had something else. You were going to say something else as well.
Yes. So the information that we are providing as part of this survey is in no way a replacement of the information that the parent should be given based on the survey feedback. So that information should anyways reach out. But as part of the survey answers, if we are providing that information, if they are unaware of these resources, if they are unaware that they have to even reach out to the school, or that there are some special education teachers who are available to help them out, they will at least go and expand their horizons sort of, and get that information. So that's what I meant. The other thing is, these questions, of course, as Letty was mentioning, that these are generic enough from previous years. But given the online learning, do we have a plan to modify these questions, or to add a few more in order to include the online learning? Like maybe, like for example, the same bullying thing, right? I'm just taking hypothetical examples. The same bullying, it might not happen face to face, but in the chat, when you're typing something, maybe you're put down by your peers, maybe you're not answered, maybe you're not taken care of. So those things we might have to reword, so that they understand about how we are reaching out. The next thing is, right now I see these questions as plain questions, like 1 to 25. Can we categorize them so that each of these categories will touch a particular
Oh, sorry, we have a couple people unmuted. If you would mute yourself, and then we'll hopefully eliminate some feedback there.
so if we categorize them, it will be easier for them to concentrate in a particular thing and then provide the answers. Like 4 categories, right? Maybe something which is specific to school and the premises, one which is specific to how you are treated, one which is specific to your academics. That way, just example. I'm done. Sorry for taking a long time.
Thank you so much, Divya.
Victoria?
Yeah. Are you back,
Sorry.
Trustee Crosby?
It would not let me unmute. I was like, every time I went to click on it, I would jump up and down, and the other thing wouldn't accept my clicking. So I apologize.
No worries.
I just, to the previous conversation, and I think it plays in a little bit to what Divya is saying, is that I think we have to create a safe space for people to be honest on a survey, that they don't want their children to be negatively impacted. So whatever information is sent along with the survey needs to make it very clear that this is going to help students and not negatively impact them. As was mentioned, you know, suddenly their child is going to be moved from 4th grade down to 2nd grade, but more that the intention is to provide supports where they are and not try to not negatively impact them.
Thank you. Yeah, tying together Yen's comments as well. Absolutely. Brian?
And just going back to Yen's comment as well, another venue that we collect information and data from our English language learning families is the presentations that they come out to the schools that have the 35% or more unduplicated. And that's really a nice venue where parents actually have a survey right there. They can ask their questions and give their input. So it's a great bond with the district office and the survey. So there is that other venue that we get that information from.
Mr. Benavides reading ahead on the agenda. Good for you. Yen, go ahead.
On the survey last year, my wife filled out one that was in a multi-language. I think it was Chinese. Same format as in English. I don't know if the Spanish was a different format also. So that's one of the things I just want to make sure we check on this year.
Can you say again about format, Yen? What do you mean by that?
The distribution data, you know, you have strongly agree, agree, strongly disagree. So they didn't have the spectrum of the answers.
So actually the data type collected was different.
That's correct.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's really important because it should be as close to a translation as we can so that the data is comparable. Okay. And then Trustee Crosby, did you have anything else? Okay. Twisha?
I think the survey is great, but it only works if actually people respond. What are we trying to do in terms of outreach for making sure people actually respond to the survey?
I could jump in. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, that's really an excellent question, because we've had years where we've got great response of surveys and years where it's less so. So the best thing we could do, and the best response we've had to a survey in the last couple of years, is in the summer when we did a distance learning survey, and we had a real concerted effort from the employee groups, the parent groups. We asked students, and we had, since it was while school was still in session, we had kind of a captive audience with students. We were able to get a ton of, I think we had over 15,000 survey responses. So I think if we do a concerted effort, we will definitely get a better response. And I think this group can, brainstorm easily some ideas of how we can get the word out.
Steve, over what time frame are we looking at for getting responses?
I think it was a 2-week. Ann Doan is the expert on this, but it's usually done in January, and I think it's a 2-week window we collect data.
Yeah, that's what she confirmed with me. It was 2 weeks.
All right, Ann?
I'm not sure if there's a line, but I've had my hand raised for a while.
Oh, I see Ann Dameron, and that is it. But I think, go ahead, Michael, and then Ann, you can check if you have your hand.
Well, I'm not as used to Google Hangouts, so I just saw the thing and it says Michael raised their hand. So there's another hand raising thing too. So there's 2 hand raising buttons apparently. But that's not
You're right along with us, Michael. We are all learning. Okay, but there you go.
All right, so you can blame 538, but I think about polling and surveying more than probably an average person does. And one of the problems is that if, let's just say hypothetically, all the Kennedy families respond, but none of the Irvington families do, you can get a distorted picture. And so when we get the results, I want to make sure that we can see from which sites and what grade levels that are actually responding. That way we can in some ways wait and say, okay, yes, a lot of people are saying this, but that's just the Kennedy community, whereas Irvington community has different priorities. So when we get the results, to not just consider how many people said this or that, but also to try to weigh it according to different grade levels and different neighborhoods.
That's a really important point, and actually, maybe Steve and Letty can speak on this a little bit. Can we have optional questions at the beginning? Because I want to balance also what Yen brought up. There are absolutely families, parents who will be more concerned by identifying questions and would be hesitant to answer, and that would actually keep them from answering the survey. But could we have questions at the beginning that do ask attendance area, is your child being, in an English learner program, those sort of questions, and some may answer, some may not, but it's still more information that we're getting now. So is that a possibility?
It is a possibility, and I believe that the current survey has asked them to identify the school, and really nothing further than that.
Anne?
I was able to get it to unmute. I remember last year when Mr. Musto was presenting results of this survey, we were all, those of us who were on the committee, astounded at the results that one elementary school got. And we found out because the teachers were offering homework passes, extra credit, whatever, for the kids to get their parents to fill it out. So I do recall that we capture very basic information. I think that school is also a 35% school, as Mr. Benavides suggested. A positive thing in our transition to distance learning over these 8 months, your clerical and office employees have become much better at getting things and links on the website, using the robocall, robo email system, making it easier for parents, using multiple methods of marketing the information. So if we can clean up some of the little challenges that we're getting in translations, because Yen, it's not just in that survey, it's in other things. It's not coming through the same, because I can read the Spanish, can't read the Chinese, but it's not coming through the same. The emphasis is not there when it's going from English to Spanish on whatever the document is. So we as a district could do better on that.
Thank you. Divya?
Couple of things. First, in addition to what Michael was saying about the survey and the results, when we are done with the surveys, are we also passing the information back to the parents saying that you said this, we listened to this, this is the action that we have taken? Maybe you have sent, maybe I missed it, but this is my first year here, so I'm just trying to say that the survey, whatever the parents are providing, and the action that we took versus what happened as part of that action. If the parents see that, they'll really feel connected to it, and they'll be more proud to participate in these surveys in future. The next thing is about parent participation. Right now, whenever the teachers or the principal or the PTA, they push for anything, parents are already engaged. So I can really vouch for having more number of participants now compared to the previous times. So when we are already trying to get that information, could we also add a section for suggestions from those areas, from those schools, to see if there is more that we could do, more that we could add onto these surveys, or any other generic stuff?
So like, are you saying like at the end of like, did we miss something, or is there something else you would like to add, like an open-ended?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, an open-ended thing, so that already I know that the number of questions are more and we might lose some of the interest by the time they go there. But whoever is engaged already, they might want to add some more details. I'm done.
Isn't open-ended, is that something that we have? I mean, we're crossing our fingers again for like 28,000 responses, and Divya is going to read all of those open-ended essays that we get, and I know she is. But just from a district survey perspective, I know that we on LCAAC get that survey data to go through, but just kind of the hard numbers, and that helps guide our goals. Is having that open-ended, what would the process be if we ended up getting a few thousand free writes in? And from a district management perspective, how might it be feasible to incorporate that information?
So again, I'm a software engineer and I work on AI ML things also. It is easier to have any AI ML parsers where it automatically goes through those regular English language words, and it sort of consolidates it and gives you a report.
So you can actually have it search and compile like 900 times this word was used or something like that.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
And
interesting.
you can actually see it in sort of bubbles. It's a very simple, straightforward thing. It takes like maximum 1 week to do such a thing.
Very cool, Divya, because I thought that was going to be a question for Steve or Letty, but you answered it for them.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, that's amazing. That's a wonderful answer.
As someone who went through all the surveys at the summer, the 15,000, I really could have used that then. So it's good to know.
The benefit of the committee knowledge, right? Awesome. Thank you, Divya. And then the other item that you brought up, Divya, I think doing some sort of newsletter or update in the spring or summer from LCAAC, I think that's a really great idea. Even just a one-pager that goes to sites that just kind of summarizes some main things that we saw in the survey and how we incorporated that into the LCAP. I think that's a great idea. And I would be happy to work on that with staff to make, and then this committee would take a look at that whenever Letty feels that would be appropriate. I'm not sure if it would be in the spring or actually closer to next September once the district school board approves it, but we can definitely work on that. I think that looping back to the parent community is a great idea. Any other any things just in general that we don't feel? I think the socio-emotional support is on there. Other items though that we really do feel are missing based on what we're seeing now that we wanted to bring up. Twisha?
So I see there's a question about technology and how it's used to enhance learning, but considering it's distance learning, I think the primary challenge I'm hearing from especially elementary kids level is their learning of technology, right? And how comfortable, because if you can't learn technology, there's not much you can learn in terms of, the feedback process, right? So can we ask a question in that format, or would that be too specific?
Twisha, do you mean something like the use and knowledge of technology allows my child to fully access distance learning? Because we're actually more like at a baseline rather than even looking to enhance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that something we could add something there that is okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the technology questions, I mean, a lot's changed in the last year, so we probably would be wise to look at those.
Yeah. Lorona?
Yes, my question is to that too. I had an experience with my own son, and this what my question to you: for kids that start their birthday in December, right? They have to wait a whole nother year, so they have like less of a time to, have the education and the knowledge. So when they enroll in school, they already behind because they started school late. So it's like being that they start the school, a year later due to their birthday. What type of transition that you guys assist with when it's like even with the technology? Because with my son, he didn't know nothing about computers, and it's like everything is new, and he's suffering from separation anxiety. The new technology, everything was just overwhelming. So how is like what type of assistance for like the teachers or just a teacher assistant dealing with that type of um, situation and the whole new distant learning? Have y'all found any like goals on to assist with those type of issues when you have kids coming from other areas into the new Fremont School District?
So Lorona, do we and I'm not sure now on the birth date, do we have, so we have transitional kindergarten in Fremont, and I'm not sure if we have anything targeted for students in LCAAC specifically regarding transitional kindergarten or even our preschool preparation programs. Is there anything that we do or have done that you've seen in other LCAPs for early childhood education?
No. Like each school district, like we came from Oakland School District, and when he was in the Oakland School District, he went from his like a couple of months him starting school. Mind you, his birthday December 22nd, so he had to start school in January. So when January had hit, the school that he went to was in Oakland. They had the kindergartens going to 6 classes versus being in one class. So the transition itself was just wrong. So when we came out here, which before the coronavirus hit, I believe it was like March or something like that, or this year, something like that. But it was around that time. He was at Briar Elementary School. Within at Briar Elementary School, he was able to have stability in one class, and he was behind compared to the rest of the kids because he was, his first year started off rocky, and then the coronavirus had hit. So within that month that he was at Briar, he was learning, and because the teacher took the time out to work with him, and then being that I'm closer to Blake Howe Elementary School, the school was like, well, he has to go to his homeschool. But I'm seeing that he's getting the help that he need at this school. I really didn't want to, take him out to school, but it was like, well, he got to go to this school. So at Blake Howe, that was one transition that he was just now getting comfortable, and they stripped him from it because they told him that he had to go to this other school. So when we went to Blake Cal, then the coronavirus hit. When the coronavirus hit, it's like now he just, going through the separation anxiety all over again, and he need assistance. But it's like the teacher can't really, give him the attention that he needs, so he's extra behind and he lost. But then I talked to the principal and explained everything to the principal, to where the principal was understanding and assist with that. So I'm saying for what type of assistance that we can get as parents to help kids get adjusted more when they're dealing with those type of issues, especially when they coming from one place to the next place, and then the technology is different.
Okay, yeah, I think so. We have part of the parent involvement. We do try to do so. Yeah, so parent support and assistance in transition, I know, is some of our goal, but there might be a question we could ask.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, Victoria, because a lot of times also, there's different types of transitions. I think definitely we heard very important transitions happening to a very young child, moving, but then also there's the other transitions of, from elementary to junior high, from junior high to high school, so that we could form, I think, some questions around that. But I think, great information, because I think we can look at some of this under the social emotional piece, but then also the academic for the actual LCAP. But so, yeah, let me take a stab at that and see if we can add a question around that. Absolutely.
We also have students who are overloaded, so there would be a transition of schools there. So I think, yeah, there are a lot of different reasons kids in Fremont are transitioning. So yeah, okay, that would be great. Thank you, Lorona. I don't see anyone else with their hand raised. So we have a few different ideas. We know we're gonna try to tweak some of these. So instead of maybe where it says at school, they might say in the learning environment or through accessing district resources. So we'll try to just tweak some of them, but where it still would be comparative from year to year, because that's important for longitudinal comparative data. And then making sure that we'll do the open-ended, and thank you to Divya for bringing up something. Otherwise, Steve was going to have his evening reading material for 3 months. And then we'll try to add a couple of those questions. Okay, so I think, and Mr. Benavides already started us off on kind of more of the interactive information, because of course these written surveys are just one thing. But let these, Steve, and then of course Brian can chime in since you've taken part in them, just kind of on what else the committee should know is happening with the presentations that target our schools. And then I don't know, Steve, if we need the slide up anymore, or if there's a different slide for this.
No different slide. I'm going to let Steve and actually Mr. Benavides can speak to it, because you guys were here last year and to speak to that process.
So but last year was my first year in my current position, and it was my first year to be able to do presentations at school sites. So what we do is we give an overview. We go to the schools that are identified with 35% or more unduplicated students. And we have 17 of our 42 schools fit into that criteria. District office personnel like myself and others go to the school. We give an overview of what the LCAP is, what the LCAP plan means, and get their input. And we usually do an activity. It takes about 40 minutes to an hour, where we just talk to them and get their feedback. I was able to do it, I think, at 2 elementary schools, and I also was lucky enough to do it with our student representative group. And it's honestly, it's one of the more fun parts of our job, because the parents have usually great ideas. By doing a couple presentations, you hear consistencies, and I mean, I think it was part of it because a lot of it happened. We were finishing up in March when all this, we went to distance learning. But that is the information that we really need to share with this group. because not only is that great parent input, but I think because you see consistencies through the different presentations, it will help us, focus our goals as we write the plan. And Brian, you probably have seen a couple presentations, so feel free to share.
And it's just a great opportunity for parents to come, directors and so on, that they usually don't have that connection with. So it's good to bridge that, like I was saying before, bridging that gap between the district office, that big building on Technology Drive, and what we're actually experiencing at the school site. So it's a great chance to express their needs and their wants in this venue. And it's very informal. They write down questions and that kind of thing. And it gets bigger and bigger enrollment or attendance every year that we do it. So it is a powerful meeting for those parents to have their voice being heard.
Share with the committee a little bit about what the balance is, like what information and about how long are you presenting to parents, and then how are you kind of soliciting their input?
Sure, it was about a 15 to 20-minute presentation, and then the remainder of the time is going through really the goals, the 4 overarching goals, and trying to drill down what they think should be the priorities within each of the goals.
So since we are at the beginning of what will be the 3-year cycle, and we actually could incorporate new goals, is there time then for parents to just share, like none of their stuff maybe fits into what you presented, but they know that it would be within the realm of LCAAC? Are they able to just share to kind of generate thought, even if it doesn't fit into existing goals and actions?
Yeah, absolutely. And the nature of LCAAC is it's so broad that usually you can find a connection to within one of the goals or our district sub goals.
And our presenters in the past have always said, anything else, any additional information that you want to share? So there is that opportunity for them to just go for it and share everything they want to share.
Victoria, this is Yen. I have a question maybe for Stephen. We have the 35% for the unduplicated students, but each of the schools have different numbers of students. I mean, some school sites are larger, some are less. Just on the sheer numbers, are there any schools that, we should take a look at to basically have that type of presentation? Not just because they fall under the 35%, but just the sheer number of unduplicated based on the school size.
So I share an idea of something Letty told me from her work in other districts, is that their LCAAC committees would develop presentations to deliver to the site council. Site councils meet on a monthly or nearly monthly basis at each school. So this may be a venue where we can solicit feedback from the schools where we are not presenting at. I think that's a way we can get input from parents of unduplicated students at schools that we're not able to visit.
Would it also be possible to maybe do one for each attendance area? I know we've done that for the new report card and that kind of thing, and it was very well attended. So that might be another possibility.
That's a good idea.
Mr. Musto, Mr. Benavides, maybe you can explain to some of the parents, it isn't just directors on what was termed the road show, but I believe you also make sure that there are interpreters on hand, because many of our unduplicated families are English learners, and connections are made for other types of supports, such as Divya was talking about earlier, resources for free and reduced lunch, foster homeless youth, some of those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's correct. Interpreters come along for the schools that have and I apologize, I don't know the exact threshold, but the threshold of Spanish speaker or Chinese speakers. And we also have other languages represented in our instructional services for translation. I mentioned Chinese and Spanish because those are the 2 most common we translate to.
And typically, like at Glenmore, we have an English only session and a Spanish only session. So we're really able to accommodate a lot of families.
So other than being totally virtual, the format would be the same. Is that for this year?
I think so. I think it's a pretty, it's at least a few years old. Dr. Rocha, who's not here for great reasons. She had her baby. If you remember, we talked about that last month. Yeah, this is kind of her design, and I found it very easy to do and generated a lot of good conversation.
In what time frame would we see that rolling out for this year?
It's a great question, and Letty and I haven't talked about it. Last year we did it from January to March. If I had my druthers, we would probably do it in a shorter time period, just because we want to get that data to this group to help us write our project, our group plan. Excuse me.
Okay, Divya.
I have a hard stop at 8. I have to drop off. But then a topic came up where I wanted to add something. So regarding the translation to multiple languages and doing the presentation, earlier I know that you were visiting the schools and there you were doing this, right? So why not have a different language presentation, a pre-recorded presentation, share it with the parents, let them listen to the presentation, and then you can have a meeting where they are going to provide you with the questions, or everybody, all the language representatives could be there, or you could use any of their translation tools where you solicit information from them, feedback from them, and could answer. That way we are going to cut down on the time that you are going to spend walking them through the presentation. At the same time, the parents will come prepared with their questions by the time they come into the meeting. Okay, time to go. Sorry about that. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
A great idea. Anne, did you have something else? All right, so I think that concludes the discussion about the community input and outreach. So we have our future meeting dates listed, so hopefully you can mark your calendars. The only thing I wanted to share so that you could be aware of that will get agendized for the January 11th meeting is that we will be selecting our representative to the district equity team. So we will be doing that at the January 11th meeting, but the reason that I want you all to know that now is that the meeting is on January 12th. So if you're interested, it is going to be a non-staff member per the rules for composition of the district equity team. So this will be available to any parent or community member of this committee. And Letty, could you just share for a minute or two so that people know what that is? And then you can kind of be thinking about it. And then when we select for January 11th, you'll already have hopefully saved the following evening if you're interested.
Yes, absolutely. So what we're doing and starting this year is building on the current equity team and formalizing it a bit more, where we're going to have staff, community members, possibly alum that graduated from our schools, and certainly parents. And we're going to look at just our equity work across the district. We know it's not going to happen in a year, but we're going to build on the success. And then at the same time, just kind of learn what's happening. So for example, I'll share with you all, we have our curriculum team that's starting to look at supplemental novels for the secondary schools. And so we'll hear more about that there. We'll be kind of like a steering committee that looks at building goals for equity within our district, and would love to have someone from here. And I know it'll be a tight turnaround, but like I said, we're kind of gathering steam, and we'll be taking the representative names for the community members and parents to the board in December. But then each committee also has a representative. So it'll be a nice size group that will be having some great discussions around equity for our district.
So if you're interested, we'll be selecting that at our January meeting. And then Letty and I thought that just having more dates on your calendar for the rest of the year and canceling one maybe is better than not having those dates saved. So those are there for you. And with that, we are adjourned at 8:03. Thank you all so much.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Bye. Same too. Likewise.